You know, everything's not awesome. But that's also why Lego Movie 2 was the best film of last year. When the first Lego Movie began production in 2011, pretty much everybody wrote it off on premise alone. I mean, could there be a more nakedly commercial and soulless proposition than a movie that is clearly nothing but a 100-minute long ad for a toy? I mean, look, sure, plenty of films and TV shows were developed with toys in mind. I grew up on a lot of them, but they at least had the decency to pretend to have a purpose besides glorifying the merch. This is just insulting. And then, when Lego Movie premiered in 2014, pretty much everybody shut their filthy prejudging mouths. Reactions were glowing. Even the more negative-leaning reviews freely acknowledged that the film was better than it had any right to be. This shouldn't have been as big a surprise as it was, since the directing duo of Lord and Miller were already rapidly making a career out of creating good movies out of bad ideas. They'd done it with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, and the Lego Movie cemented this as basically being their filmmaking MO. Not only was the Lego Movie good, it launched a proper franchise, and its exclusion from the Best Animated Features nominees at the Oscars caused legitimate outcry. Now, you flash forward 5 years to the fourth film in the theatrical releases, and also the first direct sequel, the Lego Movie 2, the second part. It made significantly less money than the first movie, or Lego Batman, despite a higher budget than either of them, and though well-reviewed, it lagged behind both of those films critically as well. It did better than Lego Ninjago in both those areas, but there was a general sense that nobody was sure what to even make of Ninjago or how it fit with the others outside of just using the aesthetic. Between those factors and the film being released in February, it's pretty much guaranteed that it was left off most Best of the Year considerations, which is wrong, because it's amazing. And I did, in fact, declare it my favorite film of that year. The Lego Movie 2 isn't just a great movie. I feel it's superior to the original. And now, I'm going to talk about why. Part 1. The plot. Let's run through the salient points, just in case anybody needs a refresher. The film opens with the moment that closed out the previous film, as the toys of a younger sister invade the Lego world that represents her big brother, and it doesn't go well. So with the Duplo aliens wrecking shop and the introduction of the idea that they take figures and bricks away for them to never return, we then jump ahead 5 years, and immediately we see that the brother has entered his everything is gritty mature now phase as we are introduced into Apocalypseburg. Everything's gritty, grizzled, the characters look like they are prepping to audition for Mad Max the musical. Everybody, that is, except Emmett. As the embodiment of childlike wonder from the first film, it's no surprise that Emmett stands as the sole bastion of how things were before it all got broody. A new invader from the Sistar system shows up in the form of General Mayhem, who nabs the handful of key characters from the first film, but leaves Emmett behind because, well, she doesn't take him seriously. Why would you? Emmett turns his house into a ship and attempts to follow, only to face certain destruction en route and to be rescued by the boisterous Rex Dangervest and his crew of velociraptors. In the Sistar system, Batman, Unikitty, Metalbeard, Benny, and Lucy are introduced to Queen Whatever Wannabe, who uses generous gifts to get onto the good side of everybody except for Lucy, who refuses to be taken in. There's a failed attempt to convert Lucy through upbeat, catchy music, but she resists and escapes. Rex and Emmett see the other characters who had never returned are acting happy and joyous and conclude that they've all been brainwashed. The pair escape when Rex gets Emmett to channel his inner pain into a destructive force, and then they join up with Lucy. The three believe that the upcoming wedding between Batman and Queen Whatever is a front for the dreaded Armageddon, and resolve to put a stop to it. The team splits up, and Lucy confronts General Mayhem, who reveals that the wedding is an attempt to unite the two sides and to avert Armageddon. They just don't know how to get the Apocalypseburg residents to pay attention to them, and their attempts kept giving the wrong impression. Lucy confirms that her friends aren't brainwashed. They're just having fun for the first time in ages, and Queen Whatever is in fact the heart Emmett first offered to the Duplos. Lucy tries to stop Emmett from destroying everything, but Rex convinces him that she's brainwashed, and Emmett breaks the temple. This corresponds to the real-world brother getting fed up with his sister and wrecking her creation. Their mom arrives and declares that since the two of them have proven they can't properly share all the Legos, then these things need to go into storage. And that is, in fact, Armageddon. Rex is revealed to be Emmett from the future, a future where nobody rescued him when he tried to get to the Sistar system, and he was left to grow bitter under the dryer. Full of destructive, spiteful rage, he builds a time machine to go back, save himself from the asteroid field, and then wreck everything his friends were creating. Rex deposits Emmett under the dryer to ensure his own existence, and then back in reality, the brother regrets what he's done and reconstructs the heart. This revives the Queen, and the rebuilding begins. Lucy rescues Emmett, Rex back to the future is out of existence. The sight of the siblings playing well together is enough to get the mother to reconsider, and the film wraps up. That's the basics. Let's start to dig a little deeper. Part 2. Refining the concept. I want to make it clear that anything I claim to be done better in LEGO Movie 2 is not meant to be taken as things having been done poorly in LEGO Movie 1. Something can be very good and still be improved upon. For me, the major improvement from the first film to the second one is in the area of theming. Like any film, there are multiple themes worked into the narrative, but the big thematic core of the first film had to do with the way in which a child plays versus the way an adult plays, or rather, the way in which adults refuse to let go of childish things while simultaneously stripping out the childlike elements and claiming that it's totally not them being overgrown children.
You know the rules. This isn't a toy.
It kind of is.
No, actually, it's a highly sophisticated interlocking brick system.
But we bought it at the toy store.
We did, but the way I'm using it makes it an adult thing.
The box for this one said ages 8 to 14.
That's a suggestion. They have to put that on there.
The thematic elements are built up throughout that first film as an underlying subtext until the big reveal moment at the end, which just flat out makes them text. The first film takes a pretty firm stance in terms of which of these modes of play is more valid. I mean, the Lego proxy for the father figure is the literal cackling villain of that movie. The second film also contrasts styles of play. There's the brother who's moving into that adolescent age where dark and broody automatically means better, while his little sister plays in a much more bubbly manner, not a million miles away from how he used to play in the previous film, without also being a straight-up mirror image. It's worth noting that this film is much less judgmental about the styles of play themselves than the first one was. We don't have as clear-cut a case of one being inherently better than the other, and it's not like the brother has become what his father was in the first film, which is good, because we're not doing becoming what you once fought against here. Since we're dealing with a smaller age gap between the two styles of play, the differences are a bit more nuanced. And since the cat's already out of the bag in terms of what's really going on, the ways in which what we see parallels the real world gets to be very clear from the outset. That's how we get awesome moments like this.
You missed me.
No, I did not.
Because who hasn't been trying to play with somebody younger and been immensely frustrated that they weren't following the rules or had somebody literally run away with your stuff under the guise of sharing? But it's not just a difference in age driving things this time. Lord and Miller, as the writers, along with director Mike Mitchell, also play with the expectations and some of the realities of how boys play versus how girls play. Now, initially on first viewing, I felt disappointed at the handling of this. I thought there'd be more commentary on female versus male-centric toy marketing, and I felt like they didn't do all that much with that dichotomy. But in reality, they actually do quite a bit with it. I just didn't take proper notice of it on first viewing because I'd expected the themes to be as upfront and clearly laid out as they were in the first film. And their approach to gender dynamic It is there, but the nuances of it kind of scooted under the radar for me initially. This film uses preferred modes of play as a microcosm for the player's personality, much like the original. But now, it also gets to work with how changes in play reflect changes in self through the brother character. Because we have the first movie to compare to, in addition to the arc that he has in this one. And the commentary on a more, for lack of a better word, girly style of play is absolutely present. It just doesn't take the form I expected it to. Because rather than going the easy route and saying, the whole pink aisle for girls thing is so dumb, or really even passing much judgment on how the sister plays at all, the film instead turns its gaze onto how the brother responds to that kind of play invading his current play preference. Why does this matter? Well, part 3. Theming is king. So the film does tackle feminine versus masculine play styles, just, as I said, with more subtlety than I had been looking for on that first viewing. And honestly, tackling the way that boys and girls tend to play differently at all was a bit of a landmine of an area to even try and address, because it risks dipping into reductive stereotyping of what boys and girls are supposed to be like. The film dodges this issue pretty nimbly, primarily by never drawing excessive attention to the fact that that's what it's doing. Signposting it as plainly as the first film did with its theme might well have ruined the whole thing, so if nothing else, you've got to admire the restraint. Now, I suspect some of you might be thinking, okay, so it's not as blatant as blue versus pink, but isn't it all still rooted in the overly broad and possibly arbitrary distinction between supposedly masculine and feminine play? And yeah, it pretty much is, and that's worth making a mental note of. However, I'd caution anybody who goes down the path of it's all still arbitrary, so we should just forget it and move on. Because to try and brush past how boys and girls are perceived to play differently is to fail and examine the ways in which these distinctions, arbitrary or not, have shaped the way we view and relate to each other. It's like when you're talking to a friend and they bring up something from a while ago that maybe you're a little embarrassed by, ashamed of your part in it, and you go, look, that was a long time ago, we don't need to talk about it, let's just move on. Sounds good, and it would save your ego a little bit, but if you can't have a certain healthy conversation about it, then you may not in fact have properly processed it and instead just opted out and pretended it didn't happen. And the things Lego Movie 2 has to say about masculine and feminine play are, admittedly, fairly broad. But that's because the way boys and girls have been expected to play and have been marketed towards, including by the Lego company, is also pretty broad. And the film isn't making absolute statements that all girls do X and all boys do Y. Rather, it's a reflection of the fact that boys are encouraged through entertainment and marketing aimed at them to play destructively. And girls are encouraged to play more docilely and homogeneously, basically to play house. Think about the toys and the games marketed to boys. Toy guns, monsters, action figures with good guys and bad guys who come with weapons and vehicles to do battle with each other. Girls can certainly play this way too, but the marketing for these toys is clearly targeted at boys. Flipping that around, girl toys are meant to be friends with each other. They have pets to play with and homes to live in. They're pristine and pretty with braidable hair and changeable outfits. Action figures come with weapons. Dolls come with a hairbrush. Whether you feel this is how it should be, or that it's stupid and arbitrary, which, yeah, pretty much is, at the very least, I need you to go with me when I say that's how things have been for a while for us as a culture. And that culture and the marketing does impact the way many children choose to play. Now, the film is shown primarily through the lens of the brother. So we're seeing things first and foremost from the perspective of masculine play, and through that lens, the feminine side is immediately distrusted. Queen whatever is just giving them stuff, trying to be friends. That is super suspicious. The heroes who never came back are happy and dancing and getting along. That's just not right. The music's peppy and upbeat. Oh, hell no. It's a genuinely brilliant realization that all of this was actually sincere. None of it was a trick. None of it was sinister. It was just how the sister plays, but through the eyes of how boys play, all of it was automatically wrong. While all the niceness of the sister's toys was honest, it was the more boyish elements that were the affectation embodied by the character of General Mayhem. Because as the sisters' avatars, they put on a helmet and kick butt because they thought it was the only way to get the brothers' avatars to play with them. Interestingly, the movie isn't really judging the brothers' mode of play to be a bad thing in and of itself. At least I don't think it is. Yeah, it's making fun of the brooding, moody nature of it, but it did the same with how nonsensical things were with things like Cloud Cuckoo Land in the first film. Where the film does pass judgment is how playing in this mode colors and shapes the brother's ability to even accept other ways of playing or seeing his sibling as anything other than an intruder. Because getting locked into this mode of play has him thinking primarily in combat terms. That makes this whole thing an invasion to be repelled, a scheme to be thwarted, a fight to be won. The sister is trying to meet him halfway as best she can without giving up what she likes, but he'd sooner destroy all of it than give in to a style of play where a wedding is the ultimate goal. We also have parallel theming taking place as Lucy spends a chunk of the opening trying to get Emmett to drop his bubbly nature, only to see him swing too far in the other direction and not listen when she tries to stop him from destroying everything. This might sound like it's not all that comparable, but the core struggle in both this and the masculine versus feminine play conflict is centered on an inability to accept something as it is and trying to force change. And what's fun about Lucy and Emmett's track is they actually flip roles halfway through. Initially, it's Lucy trying to make Emmett be different, even though this is clearly just who he is. But when Lucy realizes there's nothing wrong with the other way of being, it's now Emmett who refuses to divert from the path he's on, the path he started to be on in order to please her. And he just tries to bash everything into the shape that he wants it. This reversal is a great touch because it avoids assigning blame exclusively to either the male or female main character. And in a movie with gender dynamics on its mind, that is a really good way to balance the whole thing. And Lucy's need to accept her own past, which is a history of being a much peppier plaything, also fits comfortably into this little theming cluster because there's something that the brother needs to recognize about himself. Because as I noted before, his sister is not playing all that differently from how he did in the first film. And his losing sight of that connection is part of why things get as destructive as they do at the climax. Now, it should be said there is a joy to be had in destructive play, which the film itself acknowledges by having Emmett's first use of master breaking be so cathartic. But it's when the lens of destructive play begins to intrude on how someone interacts with the world at large that things can go off the rails. And the way the sister plays doesn't go completely uncriticized either, it's worth noting, since her attempts to placate her brother by making General Mayhem into something she's not can be read as reflecting a conciliatory mindset, reflective of how girls are encouraged to behave in more docile ways, more docile modes of play. All of this is way more intelligent and nuanced critique of the masculine versus feminine play modes that marketing has hammered into us over the decades than I expected from this film, which is why I missed it the first time. Even though my dumb ass didn't catch this stuff on the first go, I still singled out the key to the whole thing. Part 4, the heart of the movie. One of the most memorable things about the first film was the oft-repeated song, Everything is Awesome.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool with the light of the team.
It was catchy. It actually served dual roles in the film. Lord Business used it to placate the populace into believing that everything was fine and not questioning the world as he laid it out for them. But Emmett's unabashed love of the song means that at face value, the celebration and joy to be found in everything that you're willing to see it is also given validation. It's pretty clever, all things told, though it does actually muddy the theming a little bit in that first film because it's not like Emmett reclaims the song and gives it new meaning. He had just actually totally bought into Lord Business's whole shtick, and he retained the love of the song even as he breaks out of the mindset that it was meant to enforce, and that doesn't really get addressed. I'm not sure the first film had an obligation to address that, but I think it might be part of the reason that I saw a bit of a minor backlash to the film, specifically around that song. And that backlash came from people who seemed to think the film was literally pushing the idea that everything is awesome as its core message. And those people scoffed at it like they're Syndrome from The Incredibles.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
It would have been easy for the sequel to just ignore all that on the basis of people not paying proper attention, but Lego Movie 2 instead combats this perception head on. Firstly, the film is a full-on musical, something even acknowledged in universe.
Oh no, are we in a musical?
Yep, get ready.
So since it's no longer just one song repeated over and over and over again, it becomes less likely that anybody is going to come away putting a disproportionate amount of thematic meaning on the shoulders of a single song the way some people did the last time around. It helps that the songs in Lego Movie 2 are pretty good in and of themselves. Queen Whatever gets 2 really fun numbers. Not Evil is easily one of the best character introduction songs since You're Welcome from Moana, and Gotham City Guys helps speed up the temptation of Batman's scene smoothly while also allowing for a few fun jabs at the character because, seriously, this franchise gets Batman better than most of the people who've made quote-unquote real Batman movies. And of course, there's Catchy Song, which serves as a joke on youth-targeted pop songs in general and even a bit of a jab at Everything is Awesome in particular. But what I really want to focus on is the fact that the true heart and soul of the film comes in the form of a song. Because the thing the characters were dreading, Armageddon, happens. The toys get banished into storage, and the film pulls a proper fake out by pretending that's the end. And then, as Emmett has to face the fact that he's the villain and has doomed everyone, and all the others are facing eternal confinement, we get this.
Everything's not awesome,
Yeah, we know. That's what we're singing about it.
but that doesn't mean that it's hopeless and bleak.
How so?
Everything's not awesome, but in my heart I believe. We can make things better if we stick together. If we stick together. Side by side, you and I can build it together.
Yeah, build it together.
Build it together. Together forever. This song's gonna get stuck inside your...
This song is not only the perfect point to turn the film on, but it is a wake-up call to all the naysayers from last time. Because if you really thought the point of the first movie was that literally everything is awesome, then you were not paying attention. And this is for you. No! It's not all awesome, but we have the power to make it better. Maybe not truly awesome, but better than it is right now. And the fact that it can never be perfect is not a reason to not try. And if you're wondering, yes, this does factor into the themes we've been talking about, because everything comes to a head when the brother and the sister, though mostly the brother, try and make everything be their version of awesome. And it just all blows up. Because it can't be exactly what either of them wants. It can't be perfect. But rather than give up and sending everything into storage, the song marks the brothers' realization that fighting each other to have their own perfection got them both nothing. But building together can still get them something worth having. Part 5, the weird solution at the end. So let's come back to the resolution of Emmett's story, because I've seen a few people take issues with it. Not massive issues, not throwing the toys out of the crib tantrums, but I've seen it come up. Specifically, it tends to be the time travel mechanic, and how in the heck does that even work in this world given that reality, analog, and everything else going on? Virtually everything we see in both the previous film and this one has a direct, real-world explanation. The Craggle is crazy glue. Lord Business wanting to freeze everything is the dad being over-controlling. Heroes being captured by this it's the sister borrowing toys and then never bringing them back. The destruction of the wedding temple is the brother throwing a fit. Armageddon is the mother packing everything away. But what in the heck is up with the freaking time travel? I mean, we see that Emmett legitimately gets left under the dryer, so something has to have truly changed real-world history, not just the Lego world. How does that even work? And the answer is simple. Doesn't matter how it works. Because it's not there to fit perfectly as a piece of a puzzle. It's not there to pay off lore building. It's not there to stand in for anything tangibly real. It's thematic. I've got a bit of a reputation as a nitpicker. A reputation enforced quite regularly by me. I mean, I have a series on this channel called Nitpick Rants, for crying out loud. You'd think that something like this would drive me nuts because it appears to break the established rules of this world as we understand it. But I think it's perfect. Now, I don't get to talk about this very often because it just doesn't happen nearly as often as I'd like. But I do make allowances for rule breaking and bending the logistics if it has ample thematic justification. To pull an example, in the original Matrix, after being gunned down by Agent Smith and dying in both the virtual and real worlds, Neo comes back to life when Trinity kisses him. And this does not really gel with any established internal logic of the film. There's a token recursive hand wave explanation about the Oracle telling Trinity she's destined to fall in love with the One and she loves Neo, so he must be the one. But that is pretty dang thin, especially given that this is the same Oracle who told Neo flat out that he isn't the one, and she's been framed as telling people what they need to hear, even if it isn't true. So who knows how literally to take any of the prophecy stuff. But it doesn't matter, because the reason Neo comes back to life is because his journey has been one of acceptance of himself, of his place in the world, of the reality he's only just discovered, and Trinity's expression of love is a literalization of everything that he has had to accept, also accepting and embracing and loving him in return. And that is why he comes back, because it makes 100% thematic sense. So it doesn't have to make 100% logistical sense. And we're going to see the exact same thing with the time travel in Lego Movie 2. Because within the reality of the film, there is no internal mechanism that can truly justify time travel and rewriting history. But the desire, the need to go back and fix a mistake is the thematic core of the brother's realization about how badly he screwed up by letting his anger get the better of him. In his rush to grow up, he created something so destructive that the only thing to do is to rewind the whole thing and undo what's happened. Heck, the film itself clues you in on this entire trick by invoking the one bit of the original film that didn't really make sense then, but was thematically relevant. You know what I mean? It was the bit where Emmett moved on his own, which, in the first film, also made more thematic sense than logical sense. It's almost kind of annoying how clever the people behind these movies are. Part 6. Everything fits together. So as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate deep and expansive theming, but I can still be critical of when too much of a story or characters get sacrificed in the name of it. Theming, especially tightly integrated theming, can make a good story great, but it can't save a bad story. It can only make a bad story pretentious. I group themes together with narrative metaphors and allegories as something that works best when the story is still coherent and worth telling, even if those things weren't there. Films like Mother, Tree of Life, even Sucker Punch, they don't flow or make much sense if you don't catch the themes and allegories running through them. They're more theme than they are plot. And I'm not saying that that's an invalid way to create art. Honestly, experimenting is vital to the life of any creative medium, but that pretty much never works for me. If it's not a story I care about when told straight, I'm not sticking around just because it's got themes. But films like Into the Spider-Verse, Annihilation, Zootopia, The Grey, Beauty and the Beast, the real version, Blade Runner, and yes, Lego Movie 2, the second part, are telling stories that I'm on board to watch in and of themselves and then proceed to brighten and polish nearly every element through tight, consistent, and expansively integrated theming which boosts virtually everything about the film without announcing their presence on a megaphone. Lego Movie 2 is a movie many folks seem to have let fade from their memories, but I am here to tell you that if you thought it was light and disposable and just cashing in on the popularity of the first one, you owe it another chance with an eye on everything going on that you may have missed the first time around. And in the meantime, just remember the wise words of Unikitty.
It was perfectly fine without raisins!
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, I hope you'll consider all the usual stuff like subscribing, commenting, thumbs up. I also have a Patreon if you're the generous type, but you also don't have to do any of that because in the end, you're the council, I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned.